Oh, this is just a quick video to explain how I'm making these grow towers using reclaimed 25 litre HDPE containers. These are the containers I get from a local car wash. They use them to hold their detergent in. So I've mentioned these before. I've done quite a few videos on these different kind of ideas, different worm bins and vermicomposting bins and wicking containers and things like that. So what I've got here, the white container at the bottom, what I found out through using these, unfortunately the HDPE, the natural, hasn't got any additives in it, so it's not UV stabilized. So if you leave those out in the sun, after maybe about 5-6 years, they will become quite brittle and they will break up after time. HDPE, by its nature, is recyclable. It's the same stuff that milk bottles, plastic milk bottles made from, so you can actually use the domestic sort of waste stream to recycle those. What I have found as well, these containers have got carbon black. It's an additive, and basically it prevents the ultraviolet light from deplasticizing the material. So what I'm trying to do is all these wicking containers, which are the natural ones, which are the ones I made initially until I found a source for these black containers, I'm going to set those into the ground, and then I'm going to mulch up there with wood chip and compost. So they're going to be capillary wicking containers in my polytunnel. And also I'm going to have a number of these sort of dotted around the allotment, and I'm going to use these to disguise compost bins and things. So what I'm doing here is there's 4 containers. These are made from the bases of the containers. This part here, this reservoir here, is actually made from the top of the container, and I've just got an overflow in there, and I've put a rubber grommet through the cap. So what happens is, this is a sort of work in progress, I haven't actually finished this off. I want to have a filler in here as well, so when it fills up, when it overflows down into the container below. If you imagine if this is outdoors as well, I might even have another level on this again, because as you can see now it's about 3 feet tall. But then if I put another foot on there, that'd be sort of 4 foot, and then I could use that as a kind of green wall against the side of my compost bin, just to sort of disguise it and also make more growing space. What's quite interesting about these as well, because the containers are reclaimed, because they're freely available, it just encourages you to sort of be a bit creative in how you use these, and I quite like that sort of process of playing about with these different things and see what works, what doesn't work, how you can improve upon it. If you had to sort of buy something like this off the shelf, I don't know, something like that would probably be about 150 quid, and you just have the one of them. But being free, you can sort of think, well, that worked really well. What I'll do is I'll do something slightly different and I'll add to that. And on this one I've drilled holes all round, so this is like a growing tower. But on the other ones I'll drill holes in the ends, one end, one on the front, and that'll be the corner, and then I'll have some that have just got holes in the front, and then they'll be linked alongside, so there'll be like a kind of green wall planter. So I've got on here, I've drilled holes in the base of this, so when there's a subfloor in there with, I might use blocks of wood just to support this, and then there'll be a wicking sort of container, or a wicking sort of cylinder, which will be made out of corrugated cardboard and cotton fabric wrapped round and then wedged into a cut down PET bottle, and then that will initiate that capillary reaction in here. And then as the worms, because there'll be a worm tower in here as well, so that's like a tube, and then yes, I'm using this galvanized mesh, and then I'll make this one's quite short, so it'll be a lot longer than that. That will be like a little soil feeding station inside, and that will have cardboard around it and cotton as well. So the idea is that the irrigation and the moisture in there will wick into the bottom of that tube and then up through the surrounding soil. On these as well, I've used corrugated cardboard in the base of the actual planter itself, and corrugated cardboard up the side, so that does help to sort of wick moisture, and it also sort of stops it from drying out too fast as well. So these plants, they're primarily for pollinators and also for screening as well, so I want to use this as like a kind of a green wall. I've only just planted these in yesterday, so they're going to take a little bit of time to revive, but hopefully they should do quite well, and I don't see why they shouldn't. They're only growing in very minimal soil, just in a little seed tray. I hadn't actually potted them on, and I'm just using those just as a little trial really, and I think they'll work really well. Also with these, I've got a lot of succulent plants, which I think these would be nice to propagate them, because you can just poke them in through holes, and then they'll root in there quite nicely, and then they'll hang down as well. And I really want these plants to sort of bush out a little bit and kind of hide the actual reservoir. You can't plant into that bit because you've got, obviously there's water inside that. So I just take this out of the way. I may need both hands to do it, so bear with me. So in this container you can see I've got the cardboard coming up around the sides, and there's also this, there's a little worm straight away, a little soil feeding station inside, which I'm putting kind of kitchen waste and scraps in. So the nice thing about this, even though it's going to be 3-4 feet tall, you can still break down the container into separate pieces, and then you can add over time maybe a little bit more compost, or you can just put more kitchen waste in there, so the worms will work that into the soil. And with these as well, what I've done is I've made a 50mm hole through the base. So the idea is, when that soil feeding station is kind of all worm casts, you can just lift this container out and you can push it through. You can use that worm cast as you want to, and then you can put new kitchen waste or fresh kitchen waste, or even part composted material, or however. But it just means that there's going to be aeration, and organic matter is going to be getting worked into that container, so it's not going to be like a kind of typical container where it's just loses all the kind of soil life after a while and just becomes a little bit inert, like a kind of spent compost. So like I said, this is a sort of work in progress. I haven't really, these have only just been planted up yesterday, and so this is going to be a bit of an ongoing trial. But one thing I noticed with these plants is when they go to seed, they tend to curl back on themselves. So I'm hoping this will reseed, but I'm not really sure. It's very much a work in progress. But having the irrigation there, having the kind of vertical aspect as well, means these plants are going to get more sunlight. So you've got sunlight, you've got irrigation, you've got organic matter, you've got worms. So they really can't foul these kind of plants. So especially with succulent plants, the succulent plants aren't good in quite dry conditions anyway. So having a little bit of moisture there should really benefit them. So this is the tower, and the base unit, which is the same as this one here. What I'm using this one for is when you've got seedlings and you've just potted them on, you want to keep them moist. It's just a nice way of standing your plants on there, so they've got a nice little bit of a capillary action through the compost there, and it just means you haven't got to water your plants all the time, every day or twice a day when it's really wet. So there's some plants I just picked up from the garden centre, and one of these poppies I just stood those in this container. It's a bucket rather than a sort of jerry can, but the actual base layer is the same sort of subfloor and then capillary matting. Yes, I'm quite impressed by those. This one is slightly different. I put some aeration fittings in here. I'm not really sure if they're needed. These ones are, obviously it's a separate container. I quite like these because you can just lift that off, and then you can just make sure everything's sort of working in there. And if you've got wooden or timber in there as a subfloor, I might have a lot of new bits of wood to kind of get rid of or recycle in a way. So what I might do is once every, I don't know, 8 months or something, just to tip these out and then change them over, just to make sure it's nothing sort of settled in there or anything's become blocked up or whatever. But all I've done on these ones as well is slightly different, because these ones have a sort of filler on the side, with these ones, because I'm going to have these all sort of next to each other, I decided to use the top of the container, and then on the screw cap I've drilled a 25mm hole, and that's going to have a 25mm grommet, and then a piece of PVC overflow pipe will push through there, and that becomes a watertight seal. So this is quite nice, because then that will just literally be an overflow, and then that will drain down in here. But obviously I'll need some sort of filler as well. I might just put a filler through one of these holes on the container above, so when it sits on there you can just fill it up through that, and then all I'd need is an elbow, a couple of elbows, and a couple of little strips of straight pipe, and then I can just sort of feed that through. Then it would be a little bit less, well, a bit more discreet than having this kind of setup. The other thing I noticed as well, the PET bottle fits on there quite well, so you can use that as a funnel to fill up, and then when it's full you can take the funnel off and then use it on the next one. So if I've got that option, I don't have to have the PET bottle there all the time, so it looked quite neat. And I think if you had maybe 4 of these in a line against the side of something like a compost bin or something, it would really make quite a nice screen. But as I said, I've just planted these yesterday, so the plants haven't really had a chance to recover or get established yet, so I think they'll do well. So that what I wanted to sort of get across is the fact that these components, or the modules in these things, are quite flexible. So even though this is the same base container, and you can set these in the ground, is obviously you can have the worm tower or the planting tower on there. You can have one tier, or you can go as high as you like. Obviously if you're going higher, then you'd need to put some sort of strap or something around these just to make sure they're secure. But there you go. So yeah, it's a nice concept, and it's obviously working well, and it's something I've been working with for a number of months, and yeah, but really pleased. The other thing is here, got some of these small mini kegs, and I noticed they've got an opening there for the little tap, but there is a little bit of space in there as well. So what I might do is pop a little subfloor in there and some capillary matting, and then grow herbs and things in those. I've got the grab handle on these. I've cut the top off so I can use it as a planter. I kind of quite like that. So you could have some herbs, you could put it in the sun, or if it's too shady you can move it around or whatever. I think they'll look quite fun. And there's 3 of those little kegs. Yeah, so that's the capillary sort of wicking container, and then obviously just has capillary matting, or to extend it with the grow tower as well, or the multi-tiered sort of grow tower with the various options to add some height, and with the wicking via capillary action, that really only operates about 300mm. So I've made these containers 300mm deep, so you've got a wicking container, grow tower, wicking container and grow tower, so you can alternate, and you can just stack those, and it means you're going to get that much more plant growth just on the same sort of footprint. And even just the one container tool, if you imagine the area growing on one side is pretty much what you'd grow actually in the top of the container itself. So there's it's over 3 times the amount, and then if you go 2 containers tall, it's sort of 6 times the area of what it takes up on the ground. What is nice about these as well is being portable, you can kind of rotate these round, so if one side's got too much sun, you can just regulate that as well, so you can change the facing so it gets a bit more light or a bit less light. But with the school community garden, I want to demonstrate some of these, because I think they're quite interesting, and it's a nice use of reclaimed materials, and it does give you that extra planting space. For herbs and things like that, it'd be ideal, because you're not bending down to pick them up. One issue is that obviously these plants are quite dense, so you're going to have pockets behind these for snails and things like that. They will probably take a shine to them. I'm not too worried about that. I really want to try and kind of keep things growing, only plant them on when they're fairly hardy, so they've got a bit more of a sort of chance. But yeah, it's just something to bear in mind. But when you're gardening, I just like to sort of create habitats for the predators, create habitats for the things that are going to eat the snails. and look at the overall picture rather than just like a kind of monoculture where you're sort of thinking, oh, I've got to kill anything, I don't know what it is, any creepy crawlies. So obviously you've got to encourage ladybirds and the birds and the even things like beetles and ground beetles and things which will predate those slugs. So for me, it's the interest in the overall picture, not just the sort of how many kind of carrots can I grow or how many onions can I grow in a certain amount of space. So for a school, I think this is really good because it encourages that sort of inquisitive sort of chain of thought where you're looking at reclaimed materials and you sort of think, oh, how can that be better? How can that be improved? Or how can I save time watering every day by having more of this sort of irrigation and less reliance on walking around with a watering can every day. So that's what I've come up with so far. I'll get the other ones planted up and then I'll be posting some updates, but I think it's a good thing. I quite like the look of it, and I think in the black HDPE it looks a little bit more discreet as well, so it's easy to sort of conceal or use in a kind of ornamental garden as well. But obviously, yeah, I just want to give these plants a week to sort themselves out and they'll look so much happier. Anyhow, thanks for watching.